In January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany after his party won enough seats to form a coalition government. Within this coalition, Hermann Göring was appointed Minister of Prussia, the largest and most powerful of the German states. One of Göring's first moves was to seize control of the Prussian police. He filled its ranks with loyal supporters of Hitler and began directing the force against political opponents. Step by step, Hitler consolidated his power, dismantling democracy, banning political parties, and dissolving labor unions. It was during this volatile period that one of the most infamous security organizations of the modern era emerged. Within the Prussian police, there had been a small division responsible for monitoring political subversives and extremists. Göring expanded it dramatically and moved its headquarters to 8 Prince Albrecht Street, a former arts and crafts school in Berlin. He gave it a new name, Geheime Staatspolizei, the Secret State Police. The world would soon know it simply as the Gestapo. At that time, Nazi Germany was a nation in turmoil. The force that had helped Hitler rise to power was the SA, the Brown Shirts, a massive paramilitary group of more than 3 million men by 1933, led by a former army officer named Ernst Röhm. Although Röhm had once been a close ally of Hitler, the Führer began to fear his growing ambitions. Out of the SA emerged a smaller elite corps known as the SS, led by a quiet and bureaucratic man named Heinrich Himmler. Despite his timid appearance, Himmler possessed a dangerous talent for manipulation, mastering the arts of blackmail, deceit, and political intrigue to achieve his goals. He saw the Gestapo, still under Göring's authority, as a threat to his own ambitions for total control over Germany's security apparatus. Meanwhile, the streets of Germany were descending into chaos. The SA had become a violent power unto itself, attacking civilians, intimidating opponents, and defying even Hitler's own government. Hitler concluded that Göring and his secret police had failed to rein in Röhm's unruly militia. He therefore placed the Gestapo under Himmler's operational control, though formally it still belonged to Göring. In practice, Himmler was now the true master of the Gestapo. Himmler brought in one of his most ruthless and efficient deputies, Reinhard Heydrich, a cold, calculating young officer with a relentless work ethic and an obsession with order. The SA, believing it deserved rewards for bringing Hitler to power, demanded to be integrated into the National Army, with full ranks and pay. Röhm even dreamed of becoming Minister of War himself. This outraged the professional German military, which despised the idea of merging with what it saw as a gang of street thugs. At the same time, Röhm's socialist rhetoric worried industrial leaders. Allies Hitler desperately needed to secure his regime. For Hitler, the decision became clear. The SA had to go. Under the supervision of Göring, Himmler, and Heydrich, the Gestapo compiled a meticulous list of targets for elimination, Röhm and his top lieutenants among them. On June 30th, 1934, in what became known as the Night of the Long Knives, the purge began. Dozens were executed. Hundreds were arrested. By the end, the SA was shattered, and Hitler's gratitude toward the Gestapo grew immensely. Their efficiency in executing the purge had proven their loyalty beyond question. In 1935, Göring became the head of the German Air Force, and the Gestapo was officially integrated into the SS under Himmler's full command. Germany's streets calmed. Unemployment dropped. Massive public works programs began, and behind the facade of peace, a secret rearmament plan was underway. By 1936, Himmler had realized his dream, uniting all German police and security services under his control. The regular police, the SS, and the Gestapo, now operating with total immunity from the courts. He appointed Heinrich Himmler as chief of the Gestapo, reporting directly to Heinrich. Himmler, a disciplined bureaucrat, had previously visited the Soviet Union, where he studied Stalin's secret police and admired their vast network of informants. Under Himmler, the Gestapo rapidly expanded. Tens of thousands of agents and informants spread across the country, many unpaid, working instead for power, protection, or the chance to settle personal scores. Neighbors spied on neighbors. Even family members reported one another. Himmler introduced a new principle. Information is power. Every file, every conversation, every secret could be weaponized. Hidden microphones recorded private discussions, even in bedrooms, providing material for blackmail and control. It was through such surveillance that, in 1938, the Gestapo helped orchestrate the downfall of Germany's army chief. That same year, Hitler annexed Austria. Officially, it appeared voluntary, but the reality was far more coercive. Within Austria, many opposed the merger, and the Gestapo was tasked with crushing their resistance. The Gestapo also oversaw the emigration of Jews from Austria through its Vienna office, run by an ambitious Austrian SS officer named Adolf Eichmann. After Austria, Hitler turned his sights on Czechoslovakia, home to 3 million ethnic Germans in the Sudetenland. The Western powers abandoned Czechoslovakia, hoping Hitler would stop his expansion there. He did not. By the spring of 1939, German forces occupied Bohemia and Moravia. Europe trembled once more. Soon after, Hitler's gaze shifted toward Poland. Germany signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, secretly agreeing to divide Polish territory between them. In preparation for invasion, Himmler presented Hitler with a chilling plan. Gestapo prisoners would be dressed in Polish army uniforms and ordered to stage a fake attack on a German radio station. The broadcast would announce that Poland had attacked first, giving Hitler the pretext he needed. The deception went largely unheard due to weak radio transmission, but by the next morning, German troops were on the move. Poland was invaded, from the west by Germany and from the east by the Soviet Union. The world was at war once again. After the invasion of Poland, Stalin's secret police arrested German communists who had fled there and handed them over to the Gestapo. In return, the Gestapo captured Stalin's political enemies in Poland and delivered them to the Soviet NKVD. It was a grim form of mutual security cooperation between two totalitarian states. The German army executed the invasion of Poland with astonishing efficiency, but the moment the campaign ended, rivalry erupted among the Nazi security agencies. Each organization had its own vision of control, and Hitler, wary of any one group becoming too powerful, deliberately let them compete and destroy one another from within. Following Reinhard Heydrich's directives, the Gestapo began what it called the Jewish question's preliminary solution. Jews were to be segregated from the population and confined to ghettos, isolated districts often sealed off from the rest of the cities, with men and women separated. This model, first applied in Poland, proved so effective that it was soon replicated across Nazi-occupied territories. In the spring of 1940, Hitler's armies swept through Europe. Denmark fell, followed by Norway, then the Low Countries, Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and finally France. The French surrender gave Hitler a stunning and rapid victory. To the world, Germany now appeared invincible, a military force capable of crushing entire nations in mere days. After the conquest, a small number of Gestapo units were allowed to operate in France. The army distrusted them and protested their presence, but Himmler insisted that his secret police maintain a foothold there. By this time, Himmler's empire had become vast, encompassing a sprawling network of concentration camps, a unified police structure, industrial enterprises, SS combat divisions, and even research institutes. Himmler was, in effect, a state within the state. At the center of this bureaucracy stood the Reich Main Security Office, RSHA, directed by Reinhard Heydrich. The RSHA was divided into two primary branches: the SD, Sicherheitsdienst, the intelligence service of the SS, with domestic and foreign departments responsible for gathering information, and the Gestapo, whose formal duty was to suppress opposition. Within the Gestapo itself were numerous departments, one in charge of arrests, another led by Adolf Eichmann, responsible for matters concerning the Jews, and others managing surveillance, interrogation, and record-keeping. In occupied France, German forces at first treated the local population with relative leniency. Many French citizens accepted the new reality, believing it to be the birth of a new European order under German rule. Britain, under Winston Churchill, could do little militarily, so it turned instead to covert warfare, supplying and training the French resistance through secret agents parachuted into the country. In response, Hitler, angered by Britain's defiance, ordered Göring to launch a massive air campaign against the United Kingdom. The Blitz, however, failed to break British morale, frustrating Hitler deeply. This frustration made him more susceptible to Himmler's manipulation. Himmler convinced him that the real problem lay in the leniency of German occupation forces toward saboteurs and British agents. As a result, the Gestapo's presence in France expanded dramatically, its numbers multiplying hundreds of times. And soon, Hitler turned his attention eastward. Before invading the Soviet Union, he secured his southern flank by invading Greece and Yugoslavia, a brutal and swift campaign. Then, on June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. The assault was initially devastatingly successful. Soviet forces collapsed, and vast territories fell under German occupation. But unlike in Western Europe, there was no pretense of civility in the East. To Hitler, the Slavic peoples were subhuman. This was not a conventional war. It was a war of annihilation. The Gestapo took charge of handling Soviet prisoners of war, who numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Hitler had already decreed that political commissars and Communist Party representatives found among the prisoners were to be executed on the spot. Neglect, starvation, and brutality claimed tens of thousands more, regardless of whether they were communists or not. By 1941, the Nazi regime began implementing its euthanasia program, the systematic murder of those deemed unfit to reproduce: the disabled, homosexuals, Freemasons, Jews, and the Roma people. In September 1941, the first test of the poisonous gas Zyklon B took place in Block 11 of the Auschwitz concentration camp, a place that would soon become the ultimate symbol of industrialized genocide. In January 1942, Reinhard Heydrich convened the Wannsee Conference, attended by senior Gestapo officials, including Heinrich Himmler and Adolf Eichmann. Its purpose: to formalize the final solution, the state policy of exterminating the Jewish people. It's important to note that the Gestapo did not directly operate the extermination camps. Their main roles were arresting victims, tracking escapees, maintaining records, and enforcing deportation orders. When Japan attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor, America declared war on Japan, and Hitler, in turn, declared war on the United States. He had just gained a powerful new enemy at the worst possible moment. The campaign against the Soviet Union was already faltering. Yet at this stage, the Gestapo's power was at its absolute peak. Reinhard Heydrich once boasted that "There is no problem in the world the Gestapo cannot solve." He referred to his own organization as the garbage dump of the Reich. By then, Heinrich had become the de facto ruler of Czechoslovakia, a vital hub of German military production. There, he applied his trademark approach, a mix of terror and reward, crushing dissent with one hand while slightly improving living conditions with the other. The strategy worked, for a time. His success made him overconfident. In May 1942, Heinrich, who often traveled through Prague in an open-top car without guards, paid for his arrogance. 2 Czech agents, trained and parachuted in by the British, attacked his vehicle. Heinrich was gravely wounded and died a few days later in the hospital. The response was brutal. Gestapo and SS units carried out a wave of savage reprisals, razing entire villages, executing hundreds, and arresting thousands. By now, the United States had entered the war. The Nazis no longer cared about world opinion, and the Gestapo, unleashed from all restraint, operated with absolute impunity. In Western Europe, where resistance movements were on the rise, the Gestapo's brutality only deepened anti-German sentiment in the occupied territories. For them, mercy simply didn't exist. The death of a single German soldier in a resistance attack could mean the execution of dozens in retaliation. In France alone, nearly 30,000 civilians were killed as part of this ruthless policy. Not everyone was executed, of course. Many were arrested en masse, held under threat of death, and interrogated with unimaginable cruelty. But there was a fate even worse than torture: deportation to Germany, where no one ever heard from the victims again. Throughout 1942, the British organized several operations along the European coast, deploying paratroopers and special forces. In response, the German High Command issued direct orders to the Gestapo. Anyone involved in resistance activities was to be executed immediately, without trial. Uniform or no uniform, the orders were the same: shoot on sight. These directives gave the Gestapo unprecedented power. Even captured soldiers were stripped of their ranks before being shot. Among the victims were 50 officers of the Royal Air Force, executed after participating in the famous mass escape known as the Great Escape. Only 3 of them survived. The rest were hunted down and executed by the Gestapo. Torture within the Gestapo was systematic and extreme, not for pleasure, but for extracting information. There were rumors of official manuals detailing torture methods, but none were ever found. In January 1943, following the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, Heinrich Himmler took direct control of the security apparatus once run by his right-hand man. He appointed Ernst Kaltenbrunner, a tall, harsh, and notoriously brutal man from Vienna, as head of the RSHA, the Reich Main Security Office. Kaltenbrunner was a heavy drinker, intellectually unimpressive, and utterly obedient. Himmler preferred him that way, a man too dull to become a rival. After the devastating German defeat at Stalingrad in 1943, the tide of war turned sharply against Germany. Allied bombers began to rain destruction upon German cities. North Africa was lost. Italy collapsed. And on the Eastern Front, the Red Army surged forward with unstoppable force. Amid this chaos, the Gestapo's importance only grew. Over the years, it had compiled vast archives of secret reports tracking German public opinion and morale. As defeat loomed, optimism faded, and the Gestapo targeted anyone showing signs of despair, spreading rumors, or listening to foreign radio broadcasts. Counterintelligence became a joint effort between the SD, the SS Intelligence Service, and the Gestapo. Together, they uncovered large spy networks, British agents dropped by parachute, hidden weapon caches, and communication systems. The Gestapo even conducted deception operations, transmitting false intelligence through fake radio stations, operations the British didn't uncover until 1944. Yet, despite these efforts, German intelligence failed to detect the Allied deception campaign that concealed the true location of the Normandy invasion. French resistance groups, though not part of the D-Day plan, worked relentlessly to sabotage German rail and communication lines before and after the invasion. Suppressing them became nearly impossible. By June 1944, the Allies had landed in Normandy and opened a Western front against Germany. Within weeks, disaster struck at home. A group of high-ranking German officers, led by Colonel Claus von Stauffenberg, launched a daring plot to assassinate Hitler. On July 20th, a bomb exploded inside Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia. Hitler survived, injured but alive. In the confusion that followed, the conspirators briefly managed to arrest Gestapo personnel in Paris. In Berlin, Heinrich Himmler, head of the Gestapo, sensed something was wrong but couldn't tell what. Once Hitler regained control, retribution was swift. By midnight, Stauffenberg and his co-conspirators were executed. Kaltenbrunner personally oversaw the investigation and the trials before the People's Court. Those not executed immediately met horrific ends, strangled with piano wires in slow, public executions. The purge continued until the very end of the war. Hitler, deeply disappointed by Himmler's security apparatus for failing to detect the plot, nonetheless ordered Himmler to form a massive reserve army to bolster the collapsing Eastern Front. By 1945, both the Allied forces from the west and the Soviet Red Army from the east were advancing relentlessly. Germany was being squeezed from both sides. By spring, Allied troops had crossed the Rhine River, pushing deep into the heart of a devastated Germany. As Nazi territory shrank, the Gestapo's reach narrowed, but its cruelty only intensified, driven by Himmler's increasingly desperate orders. In the war's final days, Hitler and his closest circle withdrew to an underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. Heinrich Himmler visited him several times in those last weeks. One of the Gestapo's final acts came on April 27, 1945, when Hitler personally ordered the execution of General Hermann Fegelein, the brother-in-law of Eva Braun. Fegelein had tried to flee the bunker. He was caught and shot. A few days later, Hitler took his own life, and Germany surrendered in early May. Before disappearing, Heinrich Himmler destroyed every file, photograph, and trace of his existence. To this day, no one knows if he died in Berlin or managed to escape. Himmler was captured soon after, but he too took his own life with cyanide before facing trial. That left Ernst Kaltenbrunner as the highest-ranking Gestapo official still alive. He stood among the 17 defendants at the Nuremberg trials. In prison, Kaltenbrunner was terrified. He insisted, "I was nobody." Just Himmler's subordinate psychologists described him as weak-willed, schizophrenic, and emotionally unstable. He denied every accusation, even documents signed in his own hand. But denial couldn't save him. He was convicted and executed by hanging on October 16, 1946. At Nuremberg, the Allies declared the Gestapo a criminal organization, a tool of terror used by Hitler not only to dominate other nations, but to enslave his own people. In the end, the Gestapo's reign of fear only bred hatred and resistance, sealing the fate of the Nazi regime itself.